Thanks, Geneva. So I'd first like to introduce Sarab Hans, who is the president of Hans Dairy Inc., a family business that specializes in making top quality South Asian dairy products. Since joining, Sarb has been in charge of developing and manufacturing ethnic dairy products that provide a taste of home. Their current product lines are available in all the major grocery stores in Ontario. Prior to joining Hans Dairy, Sarb worked in the investment banking sector in New York, Tokyo, and Amsterdam. She has a BA in political science from University of Western Ontario and an MBA in finance and strategy from McGill University. Mandeep Hans is the Director of Sales and Marketing of Hans Dairy, one of the most successful independent dairies in Ontario. She is responsible for all national sales and channel activities to drive revenue growth, manage the sales team, spearhead business development, and expand the market for ethnic dairy products into the retail grocery space. Mandeep has strong sales background working in telecommunication prior to joining the family business. She is a BA in literature from York University. She's enthusiastic about the pent-up demand for more ethnic food options on Canadian grocery store shelves and a mission to expand that awareness. Please give a warm welcome to Sarab and Mandeep Hans.
Hi, I'm Sarab Hans.
And I'm Mandeep Hans. And we're the sisters behind Hans Dairy. That's right. In case you didn't know, we're a family business. Our parents started the company in the 90s because they were really passionate about bringing homemade food to the forefront.
Our dahi, makhan, lassi, kheer, and smoothies are all made with clean and simple ingredients that incorporate the flavors we all grew up on. Our mission is to give back to the community that has given us so much, and we do this by supporting our local economy.
Everything that can possibly be sourced in Canada is sourced in Canada by us. We keep it local, we keep it fresh. We always get asked if we have our own cows, and no, we don't. We source our milk from local Ontario farms, from farmers who work tirelessly to provide the great fresh milk that we all love so much.
There's a lot of work that goes into making good quality food. We love what we do, from our family to yours.
Think natural, think Hans Dairy.
Geneva, Tracy, and the whole team at Food Processing Skills Canada, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be talking to you today about what no one tells you about taking over the family business and how to transition it to second generation. I'm Mandeep Hans, and this is
Sarab Hans.
And we're the sisters behind Hans Dairy. Hans Dairy is a family business that started in 1997, and it's located in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. And we're really excited to talk about this topic because Sarab's been part of a lot of speaking engagements in the past, and she's talked about a lot of different aspects of her business, but this is a topic that she actually has never discussed. Is that fair to say?
Not at all.
Okay. So this is
a dirty laundry topic.
It's personal. It's going to be fun. It's going to be lighthearted at the same time. I think it's very valuable information because I'm sure a lot of people maybe that are tuning in right now are going to be deciding if they want to be working with their family members or if they're going to fully take over a family business. And we want to discuss that in full, give you some advice as to what you should be thinking about. At the same time, we want to give you a little background about us. What is it that our company exactly does? Why do we do it? And how do we continue to do what we do? And what is pretty much a lot of the advice that we received when we first started. We still continue to receive advice. Some of it is good, some of it we take lightheartedly. And so we just want to go over that with you. So just to get to know us, our parents founded the dairy, as I mentioned, 26 years ago. And they had this idea that they wanted to create products that weren't necessarily on grocery store shelves. When they immigrated from India, they were not able to find products that they were used to back home, that they either made back home, that they consumed back home. So that kind of got their passion started as to why they should maybe start a company that can do that. There were products that weren't necessarily available in Canada, which we're going to go into a little further in detail about that.
So our parents started the business in their 60s, which is wow, I can't believe it now that they actually had the energy to start it at that point. So they started in 1997 and I joined them in 2006 when they gave me a call and said, hey, we kind of want to retire now. We're in our 70s. I don't think we want to continue to do this. And so I left my job and moved back home and worked with them starting in 2006, and then realized very quickly once they retired that there was a gap. I couldn't take vacations. I couldn't take downtime. I was always on go, go, go. So that's when I talked to Mandeep and said, hey, come join me. And so Mandeep transitioned into the business and we've been running it ever so.
And then part of what we do and why we do what we do is, as I mentioned, there was a need for products that weren't available on the market. For example, what we're really known for is our dahi. That is an Indian style of yogurt. When my parents started the business, there was no dahi on grocery store shelves in Canada. We're the first ones to ever launch such a product. Now, when you look at the shelves, there's a lot more companies that are making that type of product. But this is something that we grew up making. Like, we know how to make our own yogurt from scratch. And a lot of families used to do that. That was just simply what they did. We also are the first to launch an Indian style of rice pudding in the Canadian market as well. We try to make products that aren't necessarily being made, or if they are being made, there isn't too many of them on the market, because everybody likes variety. And so we want to be able to offer that to consumers. Part of also working with our parents was that we went into the slug labor mode. Is that a little fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair to say. But the slug labor, because we grew up in the business, we had an idea of what was happening in the business. However, we weren't always a part of the business. What we did base like our business on was the South Asian base. And so we were sure that we wanted to replicate those authentic products. So our process flow and our ingredients and everything had to be aligned with the community that was very proficient in making these products at home. We've been able to get a lot of market share and a lot of traction, and we have a solid reputation now amongst our community and our client base.
And with our parents and us trying to make products, we're trying to do things as natural as possible. And what that means is that we want to mimic the flavors that people grew up on. So either making the products themselves or their family members made butter or rice pudding. We want to make sure that we're able to replicate the actual authentic traditional flavors that people are used to. The reason is that if a consumer tries our product and doesn't really taste like what they're used to, they're not going to purchase it again. It's as simple as that. So we try to make it authentically possible as we can, traditionally as possible as we can. And a big part of our philosophy is that we try to do as much Canadian as we can. What does that mean? That means we source 100% Canadian milk from Ontario farms, that 90% of all of our inputs from packaging to ingredients are purchased from Canadian companies.
We have to deviate from this a little bit because we have a mango lassi, we have a passion fruit lassi, and we do not grow that stuff here. So we try as hard as we can. So we've put our budget, our target for 90%, because there's that little flux that you just can't buy. If we can find a supplier here who supplies that stuff and it's a little pricier, we will still buy it in Canada, because we want to give back to the people who basically give back to us, so that we have a sustainable circular economy in that sense.
And then part of also being authentic to ourselves and what our parents set out to do is giving back to the community. We grew up in a household where our parents were constantly donating their time, donating their funds, any sort of resources that they were able to give back in any way that they can. So part of what we saw them doing was that they were helping construct actual schools in India, in underprivileged areas where there were underprivileged families, underprivileged kids that didn't have the means to go to school. So they helped build the schools. They also provided materials such as school materials, backpacks, even uniforms for the kids. And they did this for probably a couple of decades, to be honest. And so we saw what they were doing firsthand, and it was pretty much ingrained in us from the get-go. Yeah. And we also, on a personal aspect, do give back to the community in lots of various ways. And then as a business, it was important for us to do that as well, because we want to give back to the community that's given us so much, given our parents so much. So part of what we do is we, on a regular basis, provide food items to food banks. We provide food items for programs that help do deliveries to people that are unable to cook for themselves. And that includes anybody that needs medical assistance, anybody that is elderly and maybe is living on their own and they're not able to cook for themselves. We also provide funds to local hospitals in order to help them purchase new equipment. We've sponsored various youth sports teams in the hopes that these youth have the ability to play sports where they may not have. And we continue to do this on a regular basis, and we will continue to as long as we have the means to. It's very important for us.
So now that Mandeep has given you a nice rosy picture of where we are now, I think it's time to talk about where we came from, our roots. So the topic of the discussion today is what no one tells you about taking over a family business. It's not an easy transition. I mean, Mandeep mentioned we were slug labor. So when my parents started this business, I was in university and she was in undergrad. Sorry, she was in high school. And both of us would go to work, come home, change our clothes and head to the factory where we were basically packing milk into milk crates and loading trucks for next day's delivery. Sometimes we were making deliveries ourselves. So we kind of were always slug labor working through the business up.
And part of that was that we did not get paid for our services.
No.
So we would work full summers with our parents at the business. And if we even asked for $10 a day just for lunch, we were looked at as, why would you need $10? $5 should suffice. And as Sarab mentioned, we were doing deliveries on a whim of a notice. So for example, because we were starting off, as a business, you never want to say no to any opportunity. You want to say yes, because you're trying to build any avenue you can in order for it to be profitable.
Yeah.
First and foremost. So what that meant was that if a customer called and they needed 50 bags of milk right then and there, and they cannot wait till tomorrow, we would be putting the 50 bags of milk into our trunk, into our back seat, along with some crates, and we would get over to their store as fast as possible. And only to find that their store would be located at the bottom of an apartment building. So now we have to schlep all of the material out of our car, the bags, milk bags, the crates, and walk it down 5 steps, only to then schlep it all the way up 10 more steps to get into the store. And you have to do it quietly without any complaints. You're sweating, you're uncomfortable, and at the same time, you have to get back to the business within, I would say, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Otherwise, we would get some words from our parents. And it was just being able to say yes and jumping at a moment's notice to do anything, anywhere, anytime.
So we're going to give you some advice that, resonated with us of how we transitioned these 2 beautiful people out of their business and we took over.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how to define your role in the business before you say yes. I was able to test drive this approach twice. And when I say twice, that obviously means that the first time I test drove my role in the business, it didn't go so well. I had the opportunity when I was in my early to mid 20s to work with my parents for a few months to see what I could do in the organization. When I first joined them, I was under the impression and that I was going to be a supporting role. I wouldn't be leading the company in any sort of way. I would be just a support system to be able to do whatever they needed me to do. One of the reasons that was the case was because I don't think my parents were prepared to hand over a business to me, which is understandable because I didn't know what I was even going to be doing. The other thing is that I was too young, so I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the background. I didn't have the knowledge. So I can't imagine that they would want to hand over their business to somebody who was, let's say, 25 years of age. Sarab and I, if we had any family members at this moment that would want to take over the business and they're 25, I don't think we would entertain that.
No.
Yeah, so I can't really blame my parents for not wanting to do that. At the same time, being the youngest was a factor. What do I mean by that? So I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and I know everybody watching, everybody has a role to play in their birth order. It doesn't matter if you're the oldest, the middle, or the youngest. It really is something that is real, that is tangible. There is a role that you play, whether it's a strong role and it's very obvious, or whether it's a role that isn't that obvious and it's just under the surface. There's something to be said about your birth order. And so me being the youngest meant that my parents didn't want to hear my opinion first, if they even wanted to hear my opinion at all. It also meant that I wasn't taken seriously. And so that was just part of our family dynamic and something that will actually translate into the company. There's no way that you can get around that. Is that fair to say?
Fair.
Okay, that's good. And then the other thing is that it's not something to feel bad about, because it's just the reality of the situation. And the purpose of talking about this is that I just want to lay out the dynamics between family and how that can really bleed into the professional realm. And there is a way to manage it, but there's no way to completely eliminate that. It's hard to create that divide between personal and professional relationships. In the case of working with my parents, it wasn't something that we could do successfully. I worked with them for many months and we just couldn't get to a point of mutual respect. The type of mutual respect that we were able to have in the household, it just didn't translate into the workplace. What that also looked like was that we were banging our heads together. There was a lot of stubbornness. We were not able to move forward on anything. So there wasn't any progression being made on the business realm. I had to exit after several months of working with them, and I was so happy to do so. But I think secretly, my parents were probably more happy that I was exiting the business. And we pretty much divorced amicably, is what I want to say. And everybody was happy just not working with each other. And it was a good thing at that time.
So the scenario when I came into the business was a little different. When I graduated and finished my MBA, I called my father up and I said, hey, listen, I'm done. I've learned a lot of stuff. I'm going to come work for you and help you. And he was like, no, I want you to go. I want you to get experience in the real world, because this is not the real world. You're going to treat this as a little pet project, and you're not going to know how to put your expertise into it, and you're not going to know what hard work is. So he literally kicked me out. I came back when I was in my early 30s is when he called me. And at that time, I think that the situation was different from Mandeep and me, because I was older, I was a little more mature. So that concept of respect with your parents gets a little more solidified versus when you're young. Still, I won't say that I didn't face challenges. Before I even came here, I needed to define my role. I had a lot of friends of mine had taken over their parents' business, and they had not defined who was going to be steering the car, who was going to be the driver, and who was going to be the navigator. And after a couple of years of banging heads and not making progress on their ideas and having it all pulled back by their parents, they had to exit, and that affected their personal relationship. And that's one thing you don't want to have, you know, at that point, it's a little too late. So I made sure that when my parents said, hey, come take over the business, that I sat down with them and said, okay, look, I can't come and test drive it because I got my other work and I was out of the country, but let's see. And I asked them, what do you see yourself doing in the business? Like, what's your idea? Are you looking for a retirement plan? Are you looking for a financial stake? Are you still looking to work? And my mother was very clear. My mother was like, once you come, I'm out, I'm done. My father, on the other hand, was very much, when you come, I am still the boss, because I'm not comfortable with the fact that you don't know anything about this. My dad's an engineer, has a very technical background. And so that aspect of the business was very important to him. So we kind of negotiated the fact that I would come back into the business, and for one solid year, I would work only in production, no changes, no business development, no R&D, just in production. So in that year, I went and got myself my pasteurizer's course. I went to a grading program, which, you know, you grade milk, raw milk when it comes in from the silos, you smell it, you look at it, and you try to decide if it's acceptable. And for someone who has terrible allergies and no sense of smell, that was actually the hardest part of the whole getting certified. I had to learn about pneumatics, steam, everything. So for a whole year, I worked in the back I put my business suit in the locker, and I put my ego on in the back burner because I was just an employee. Once I came out of that 1 year, it gave me a lot of confidence. You know, myself, I felt like, okay, now I know exactly what the business is. I've worked myself from the bottom up. So I'm able to deal with people. I was able to decipher when people were bullshitting or telling me things that were actually not true. I was also able to say, okay, this is a product line that using our equipment, we can actually make. So working at the bottom of the business and working your way up is a great way to define your role and to transition yourself into the driver's seat.
So the second time that I was able to test drive my role before jumping in was with my sister Sarah. Obviously, this time it was successful because we wouldn't be sitting side by side now. And at the time, how I was able to do that was that I was working at a telecommunication company, and I took a few weeks off from that job in order to work alongside Sarb and see what I would actually be doing in my role. Obviously, we've been able to do it successfully, but it took work in terms of that we had to define our roles from the get-go. Sarb is my boss. There's no question about it. She's my boss at work, and she tries to be my boss outside of work. as well, I think. And Sarab will talk to me in a certain way at work, which she's quite aware that she does. And I think she secretly likes it.
100%.
Yeah, I think so. What I mean by that is that she has a tone of authoritarian, which I completely respect. When I joined the company, she had already been running it for 6 years and she was running it successfully. So she knows what she's doing. So I can wholeheartedly trust her. How we interact at work, what we say to each other at work, any hiccups, any arguments, any disagreements that we have inside of these four walls stay inside of these four walls. Never, never, never are we allowed to allow it to go outside of the building. That's something that we knew that we were going to do from the get-go, and it's something that we continue to do. And it's really, really important because we worked hard to establish that barrier, and we've been doing it for so long now that it's become second nature, and it just flows harmoniously, I guess.
Yep, very much so.
Yeah. If you're thinking about taking over your family business, I highly encourage you to take the time to do the research, take the time out of your normal schedule to figure out if you want to do it before you jump in. There's 3 different scenarios when it comes to that. One is if you are thinking of taking, or not taking over a business, but if you are thinking of working with your family in a business that, and it's family members that you don't really care for, you don't have a mutual respect for, then you got to run for the hills. Do not in any circumstance even consider working with them. It's simply not going to work. If it doesn't work in a personal realm, it simply doesn't translate into a professional realm. The second scenario is that if you're considering working with family in a family business and it's a family or family members that you don't know well enough, then get to know them personally first. It can definitely work in the professional realm. I'm not saying that, but you need to know them on a personal level, understand their nuances, respect where they're coming from in order to decide whether or not you think you could work with them. And then this third scenario is exactly what we did, which is if you're considering working with your immediate family, or if you're considering working with really close family members of yours, take the time away from your normal life, take the time off from your job and go into the business for a few weeks and see what your actual role is going to be and what you can do to make the business stronger together. This will really give you a hands-on approach and allow both of you to see every side of how this relationship could possibly work.
So now that we've kind of addressed defining your role in the business, the other main aspect is defining your parents' role. As we know, every entrepreneur loves their baby. This is my dad and my mom's baby. And to basically expect that they will be out of the business, sitting at home or traveling was not something that was a reality. And I don't think it's a reality for most entrepreneurs. They still want to stay actively involved. They still want to be in the business. So for us, it was important to see what part of the business they wanted to be in. My mother was out. She was like, I'll do advisory. Perfect. My father was, I want to be active. And the good thing about for me with my father is that we are very similar in personality. He is just as aggressive and he's just a big risk taker as I am. So I was like, okay, because we have the same kind of mindset of growing the business, I'm okay with coming and working with you. However, me and him had to sit down and say, okay, you're going to be in the business, but at some point I have to make all the choices. You have part say in it, but at the end, if I say we're going to do this, we have to do it. We can't be undermining each other. And he was okay with that. I know that if I had worked with my mother and she had decided to stay in the business, it would have been a problem because she's very much of and she's not on the call, thank God. She's very much of a non-risk taking personality. So with her, it was like, hey, let's open up this venue of distribution over here. And she'd be like, I see these problems. I don't think it's a great idea. So I knew with her, it was going to be hard to move the ship in the direction I wanted. So she had defined her role as an advisor, whereas my father still wanted to remain as a decision maker, but in what aspect? So my father had decided that he's still a decision maker in the aspect of engineering, in the aspect of production, in the aspect of procuring new equipment and installing it. However, if we're talking about R&D and developing of products, that was where I was the boss.
And when it comes to who's the boss, it was very clear from the get-go that Sarb is the driver and I'm the navigator. And I have no problem with that whatsoever because she has a degree in business. She comes from experience running a business for many years before I joined. And so I know I'm going to be contributing to the company as a whole. And also at the same time, I've been able to now change into a role where I'm directing a lot of aspects of the company as well, different departments. And we had to pretty much get comfortable with what our working styles would be. That took a little bit of time. And because of that, we have a mutual respect for each other, so that I handle like large parts of the business, such as sales and marketing. And when I do so, Sarb doesn't really dive into that department because she's handling so many other aspects of the business. So we're able to trust that each other is going to run whatever aspect of the business it is. And we only come together to figure out things if there's a problem, or if we're trying to get to another level of business and expand, then of course we're sitting down to brainstorm. Other than that, we try to keep things separate. Our everyday scenario is she's the boss, I work under her, and it's been working really well for us. And that's how it's just going to continue to work until she steps out. I don't know if that she will be able to do that or not. And so it's just important that, like, also that even though we stick to our realms and our departments, we still should be able to speak our mind to each other. But also know that when we're saying something to each other, it doesn't mean that that person has to do exactly what we suggest or approach a situation exactly how we said it. We should know that we're just going to give our input, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove ourselves from the scenario and just let the other person take control however they may, whether it's with our input or not with our input.
And the question that everybody always asks is, can your parents take a backseat? And what we found is, yes, they can. It takes time. It's not that you're going to come into the business and within a year, they're going to be like, yes, we're out, you got it. I think you have to build a level of trust, and you have to build a level of respect with them. And I think working in the business, when I first came in and started on the production side, helped me build that level of trust with my parents. They trusted the fact that I was vested into the business. It wasn't just kind of flash in the pan and I'm gone somewhere else tomorrow. They trusted that I understood the business. And when that came out, the trust came out, then the respect came out, and they were actually able to take a backseat. I was able to transition my parents from decision makers to advisors. For us, it was not that difficult, just because when I moved back from New York, we were all living together in the same house. You know, I didn't have a vehicle, so we were driving together to work and back. So this whole time we were constantly having conversations about the business. What do we think? Where we want to go? What's the problems? What are the issues? The rest of the family was totally pissed off about it, because that was all we talked about 24/7. But that allowed us to have an advisory role to each other. So that allowed my parents to be like, okay, you know what? She's relying on us for advice. We're part of the conversation, but they weren't trying to control the outcome. And that was the perfect scenario. And even today, when I go home to my mother's place now, I sit down and we just hash it out. And she's perfect because she has this historical background of the industry, historical background of the customers and the suppliers, and is able to give us really good advice.
And I think one of the main things Sarb was mentioning to me when I first joined the company was that our parents needed her to work in the back of the business because they found that it was very vital.
Vital, yeah.
And explain to us why.
Yeah, well, it was very vital because that's the core. Selling something is not easy either, but making something is much, much harder. Making something that's, going to be consistent and going to be reliable and not going to have quality issues without understanding everything that's going on, I think it's hard. And my father had said to me, you need to make sure that everybody is replaceable, even yourself. If you have a production manager that you're relying on and you can't fire that individual because you are reliant on them, you got a problem. So I think making me and forcing me to work in the production side of business and work as general labor was so beneficial, because when I had to make some transitions, it was easier for me to say, you know what, it's going to be really hard. We're going to have to buckle down, but it wasn't something that was not impossible to do.
And then the fourth and last piece of advice that we have is kind of a fun one, because what a lot of people don't tell you is that, of course, if you take over a family business, you're inheriting the business. But what they don't tell you is that you're also inheriting the baggage that comes along with the business. And what was a little stunning to us was that we assumed, of course, that when we take over the business, the family members that were currently working in the business are going to be coming along for the ride. But what we didn't anticipate is, how do we handle family members that don't work in the business, but obviously want to say, or maybe have a say to some degree? And so that was a little interesting. And at this point, I hope none of our family is tuned in while we're talking about this. We're not going to use anybody's real names, but this is going to be a little fun one to talk about.
Yeah,
for sure.
Prime examples, we had a legacy employee, that someone who was friends with my father and working in the business. When I took it over, he was not really listening to what I was asking him to do. He was not really participating. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was younger, I was the owner's kid, and I was a woman. Let's be honest, you know, a lot of people do not like having a boss that is a female. So I fired him. Needless to say, he went to my parents' house, had like a nice cup of coffee with them, and told my dad, and my dad made me rehire him. So the transition, no matter, you know, we talked about who's the boss, it's not a transition that happens overnight. It literally took me 8 years, 8 solid years to get my father not to do things like that. Because for him, he was like, why are you firing him? He's a friend, he's a good person, but he wasn't part of the growth plan. So 8 years it took me to do that. And then we had other family members that were part of our business who were very, very good at times and very, very bad at times, because they had no fear of losing their position or losing their job. And transitioning them out was a very hard thing to do, but it is something that I think if you're going to take over your parents' business, you have to get rid of the inherited baggage. It can work for you. Some family members, such as Mandeep and myself, can work together, but others that you don't jive with and don't understand the fact that you're in the driver's seat, you need to somehow get them out of the business. And the way I thought about it and the way that allowed me to not feel bad about it was that I'm never going to be able to hold on to quality individuals that are working with me unless I get rid of the baggage, the people that are inherently not interested in helping us grow. So I knew that I was disadvantaging the business and the rest of the people that were working with us if I hadn't gotten rid of them. Now, suppliers and customers are totally another thing, because of course you're, you know, the owner's daughter. And I remember when parents first started the business, there was a lot of uncles, you know, everybody was an uncle because we're South Asian. So everybody's an uncle. So my uncle was the one who did the HVAC, and the uncle was the one who did the plumbing and electric. So then when I came to the role of where I was now asking them and I was saying, hey, you know, you gotta be accountable to me, that transition was very hard for them. So what I did to make that more accommodating, instead of saying, this is what I need, I started to make the conversation, I need your help. Can you help me with this? This is what I'm struggling with. And that helped us transition those suppliers and customers to actually buying into our business rather than staying solid with my father's business, which was a very different business. So that's, you know, you have to transition yourself to, you know, get rid of the inherited baggage, but do it in a way that you get a benefit from it.
And another one, a big aspect of this is, which I mentioned at the top of the slide, is handling the family that doesn't have anything to do with the business. Didn't even know that was going to be problematic or an issue, but everybody, and I mean everybody, has an opinion. Majority of the time, the opinions that are coming are from those people that have never ran a business. They've never managed people. They've never been the person to steer a company in any way. And we still continue to this day to get those opinions, and we have to manage it in such a way so that it's not noise, but it's more proper advice that we can use. So simply put, these people have a lot to say, but they don't, for the majority of the time, know what they are talking about. So we have to manage it in such a way. Initially, when we used to talk about things to our family, about what's going on, what our struggles are, what our successes are, we found that too much information was coming at us, and it was presented in a way that was oversimplified. It just wasn't practical. So now we're at a point that we don't talk to our family about everything that's going on in the business. We shut down the conversations. So if Sarab and I are in a room with family members and one of us starts talking about something and we know we really shouldn't be talking about it because we're opening ourselves up for like a lot of information coming our way that isn't necessarily good, we'll give each other a look, and then we know to shut our mouths and cut the conversation off. And I know it sounds a little sad to say that, but we have to do that because it's really necessary. It's not just necessary for us and our peace of mind, but also it's necessary for our family's peace of mind. And what I mean by that is like, if we're telling them all of the struggles that we're having, and we've had a lot in the past, they don't feel good necessarily about hearing it, and maybe they don't want to hear it, or they don't want to hear it all the time. So we're also doing a service, not just for us, but a service for them, not having them exposed to every struggle, everything. And also, when I say this, I don't mean that never share anything. Definitely share things. Like, for example, when we were in our initial building, we had about a 7,000 square foot facility, which was, it served us for many years, but we outgrew it. And when we did that, we moved into our current facility, which is about 24,000 square feet. And we were juggling both locations at the same time, which is very hard to manage because we were moving equipment over. We weren't able to run all of our production ourselves. So we outsourced our production. There was a lot of headaches that came with it, financially, emotionally, so much stress. So when we were able to talk to our family about it, they were sounding boards, and it was therapeutic. It was great. They loved helping us out, and we enjoyed that they were part of the journey as well. So there is times where you can talk to family members and take in some of their advice, but you have to learn how to filter it. So we, like Sarab and I, are both guilty of letting our family into our inner workings of the company. And we try not to do that all the time. And we want to make sure that everybody's at ease when we're talking about the company for the most part, and we have each other to lean on. So we can say whatever we need to each other, vent it out, get it off the table, and we're good to go.
Yep. So to summarize, we all, if we were taking over a family business, we all have to figure out how to be taken seriously, because honestly, we are just somebody's kid. And so the 4 aspects that we want to kind of touch back on is check your ego at the door. You're coming into a business that's established. You're coming into your parents' facility. You need to check your ego at the door, because you need to learn from the bottom up. Secondly, ask for help. Don't direct. If you come in and say, I want, that's the wrong aspect. Nobody's going to follow you. You need to say, you know what? I don't understand this. This is what I'm looking for. I need your assistance. Everybody will step up to assist you. You have to prove yourself. Just because you're someone's kid doesn't mean that you have it easy. You have to prove yourself. You have to prove your skill set. Only then will people follow you or listen to you or help you go where you need to go. And what Mandeep was talking about just earlier, you have to take advice for people who have skin in the game. The people who don't have skin in the game, meaning that they're not also risking their future, they're not risking their business, they always have a very different take on the issues that you have. When you have skin in the game, you need to talk to people who are on the same wavelength as you, people who are risking things. They have a different take.
And we want to say thank you so much for all of the time you've afforded us to talk about this topic. It's so near and dear to us. It's personal, it's fun, and we really enjoyed talking about it in general. And if you're seriously thinking about taking over a family business, give it some really good thought, because it can be a roller coaster at any time. And we're so happy that we chose to take over a family business and work with family at the same time. And we've had so much fun doing it, and we're going to continue to do it for as long as it's going to be fun. So thank you so much for giving us the time to talk about this today.
Wow. Thank you both so much. You guys are so real and honest. I love it. Really bringing that practicality, I think, is what's needed. I think a lot of times we see the end result. This is great. You're successful. You're thriving, but you're not taking into account the process, right, of doing that. So, I'm of the old school mindset too. Demonstrate, prove yourself, hard work. Respect those who are ahead of you. Maybe you're not talking all the time. You're gonna listen, watch, see. So I love that you worked at the facility for a year prior to production. They're like, you ain't just getting the keys like this. You're gonna actually do the work in production. I'm like, wow, that is amazing. For a whole year, that takes strength, but I'm sure you've learned all the intricacies. You're understanding the innovations process, the people, like you mentioned, how to actually manage them better. So that to me is like a key. But we have a lot of great questions I'm going to get to here. So one of the first ones says, when do you think succession planning should start? I think I might know the answer, because you said your dad said one key thing. And that was to be able to replicate yourself everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
To make sure you're replaceable.
Very much so, very much so. He said, you gotta be replaceable. Everybody has to be replaceable in the business. And I think for us, our succession planning kind of started just before COVID. Just before COVID, we run a very lean ship, meaning that there was not a lot of management, there's not a lot of supervisors, but we realized that if we wanted to be able to step out, we needed to build that hierarchy in the company. So just before COVID, we were like, okay, we need an operations manager. We already had a production manager. We need a QC manager. And then we started to build supervisors in. So it started, I'd say, yeah, 4 years ago now, 4 years ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. And what do you think that, like, should companies be starting to succession plan even, like, 15 years out, 10 years out? But,
I do think like, see, well, Mandeep and me both do not have children. So our succession planning for us is just, where do we see ourselves at retirement? Where do we want to be? And for us, it's like, we want to maintain a company that's still profitable and still running on its own without us being present. So for us, the succession planning is, how do we keep this business going and allow us to be stepping out and doing other things, joining boards, giving back, talking about policy around food, and what you guys working on getting people interested in working in food. So we want to transition ourselves out. So our succession planning is around that aspect, around where the business goes after we go. We're not too vested, I'll be honest. We're not tied to it. We don't, it's let's have a good time now, let's make it work now, and then we'll see what happens in the future.
And I know a few people have heard that answer for Sarab and their jaws drop, because they're like, what do you mean? You don't know where the company, well, we know where it's going, but who is it going to? And we're like, we don't know, and it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
Because as we mentioned, we worked with family members in the past, and would we pass it on to any of them? No, we wouldn't. So we have to find that person or people. So
right.
Maybe it will be staff.
Exactly. You never know who those shining stars might be. So thinking about the future and innovations, automation, I saw like the plant is really, I find it's fairly highly automated and sophisticated, looks really well. So do you guys get out there a lot on the road? Are you at trade shows? Are you looking at new equipment? Are you able to go to these international conventions and things like that? I know just, some of people at your owners at your level, that's what they're saying. You have to be out there to, to see the expansion that you can continue to build upon. Is that something you guys do quite a bit?
We did not do it. And I think that was why 4 years ago, we were like, we need to put management in place, because me and her are constantly here. We're stuck here. So if anything happens, we're here. We're dealing with it all. And we were like, we're not growing the business. We're working in the business, which is great, but we stopped growing the business when it became so busy. So yeah, I realize it's so important. And so when we got everybody in place, COVID hit. So then that stopped it again. But as of this year, I've transitioned my role out of production, out of operations, and joined Mandeep in sales. I'm not sure if she's going to appreciate it. But as of June, I've transitioned to out of the office in sales, procuring new equipment, procuring new customers.
Awesome. So where do you think you're going expansion-wise? Are you in the US markets right now, or is it just in Canada, or what are you thinking in terms of international growth?
Yeah, currently we are only in Ontario. So
okay.
Yeah, the plans are that if we do go across Canada, that we've pretty much established a partner on the west side of Canada that would make our products for us, so that it would be out of their facility. They're already up and running. They know what they're doing. So that would be not an easy way to set it up so that we can get across Canada, but a lot more manageable than trying to produce everything in-house for the whole of Canada as well. And
it kind of goes against our philosophy, because our philosophy has always been natural and clean. So we don't have shelf life to make it to BC sometimes, to hit the stores on a timely manner, to not be discounted because we only have 2 weeks left on our shelf life. So that has always been a hiccup for us. So then we were like, okay, we can't transport from here, so looking, as Mandeep said, at a facility there. But now we're also looking to go south into the US, into New Jersey and New York, where there's a huge South Asian population.
Wow, lots of opportunity. That's stuff's so exciting to me. I love that piece of the marketing and getting your products out as far and wide as possible. Okay, let's get back to some of these questions, which I think some are pretty good here. Many small businesses do not have the time or resources for HR practices. Did you have HR practices set up? Or if you didn't, do you have any best practices you can share?
So for many years of the business, when we started, we had absolutely no HR practices because you financially don't have the resources to put into HR.
Yeah.
It's not something that companies look at doing, like that's the first thing they must do. It gets put on the back burner. So we didn't do it for, how long?
8 years, I think.
Yes, we didn't do it at all.
We didn't have employment agreements. We didn't have anything. And so, and we didn't have enough work for someone in HR to be happy with us. So we ended up getting ourselves a part-time HR consultant who would come in, set all of us up, and they were the people that we would call on a constant basis. And then in the meantime, we send a staff member of ours who was on the administrative side to get her accreditation. So she got her HR certifications, and now she does our HR with the support consultant still.
And it's not necessary to do HR right at the beginning. If you had to pick and choose where you're going to put your resources, that's one you can wait for. You don't have to do that initially.
Oh, well, we did the HR, I guess.
Yeah.
I get you wear all the hats, right?
Yeah.
So, no, that's really good. So then in that same line, how are you finding the right people to work for you? And do you access immigration, or do you find it challenging with your recruitment practices on that?
It's been challenging. I think with COVID, everybody has faced the issue of shortage of labor. And that's been a huge challenge. Skilled labor has also been a huge challenge in this industry. That's why I find like we really I appreciate that organizations like yourself are working to bring people into this industry, because I think it's such an important industry. So many people touch it, from the farm level to the restaurant to the grocery chain level, but so few know anything about what jobs are available in it. It's been difficult. No one's saying that. We have relied on agencies, which we do not like to do, temporary staffing agencies and things like that to get us through hard times.
And we've relied on a lot of the major websites that you think of when you're looking to recruit people. And they've been very resourceful. And LinkedIn is a great way that we've been able to interact with people. A lot of people have expressed interest in working with us. And so we've met with them in the set and let them know up front that we may not have a position available at the moment, but come in, talk to us. Let's see what your skill set is. And we've actually hired a few people that way, where maybe a year later we'll reach out to them, or 6 months later, and they are now still working with us. So LinkedIn is a really good source.
Right, that's good. I know word of mouth has been super popular as well, especially in the South Asian area for sure. Like I know a lot of companies who like 80% of their workforce is South Asian, but they're hiring all of them coming in from word of mouth, family members. They're using, the different pathways for immigration, bringing people in and so forth. Has word of mouth been good for you guys as well?
It really has.
Yeah. One of the things is that when we started working with the part-time HR consultant, when we didn't have HR inside the facility, the consultant said, hey, how about you offer a cash incentive to an employee if they recommend somebody and you keep them on as permanent staff? And we thought, really, is that going to make a difference? Yeah, I did. It actually did make a difference.
A huge difference.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of people refer people that are become permanent, and there makes like a few $100s off of every referral. So it's worked. And when we posted all over the company that we're looking for somebody, I think within 2 days, somebody's already recommending somebody. So there's lots of ways to go about it. Word of mouth is great. You're absolutely right on that.
Wow, awesome. I love hearing all the different, kind of tips and things that different companies are doing to recruit and retain your workforce. Here's a good one. Do you have any other advice for women taking on leadership roles?
Oh, yeah.
A whole other discussion.
That's a whole other discussion,
What comes top of mind?
You know what comes top of mind is sometimes when you take up a leadership position, you always feel like you got to lead like a man. You know, you got to be aggressive, you got to be forceful. And when you start doing it that way, it's not effective because it's not true to your nature. And people see, you know, they see past it. So I think for sure the best advice is be authentic to however you want to lead. There's so many different pathways to lead a business. It doesn't have to be the masculine pathway. It can be the feminine pathway. It can be anything in between pathway. And some days you are aggressive and some days you are soft and some days you're a team player. So do whatever feels right because that's the path to success.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely being yourself. And, you know, I love the compassionate leadership piece. That's I kind of trend on that side more, but you can be compassionate, like you're saying that maybe somebody isn't the right fit for you right now. So maybe you want to direct them to another area within your organization, or maybe you have to exit them out of the organization, but it's still demonstrating that compassion, understanding where they are, their skill sets and so forth, and being able to do that in different ways, right? But there's so many different things about leadership and women. And, you know, like you said, you're asking your, you know, HVAC person or so forth to help us, you know, just for them to hear it in that way instead of, you know, dictating it those ways, you know, really being able to, you're figuring out the nuances on, you know, how to really get them on board.
Right?
Exactly. We have a couple more questions. Let me see. Oh, yeah, here's somebody asking about your BC. I know Hans Dairy well. Hans Dairy is well known and established in Ontario, especially GTA and Southwest Ontario. Any plans to expand perhaps in lower mainland BC as a high South Asian population?
Plans have been in the works. COVID kind of put a kibosh on it with the company that was going to co-pack for us. Now we're starting to revisit that relationship again and see if they have capacity. So let's see. I'm hoping maybe next year.
Yeah. Okay, great. I guess people are noticing maybe in the picture, there's another sibling there.
Oh, yes.
Did they want to get involved, or did he want to get involved in the family business, or is?
Yeah, she's not going to appreciate that we didn't give her a shout out on this. Yeah, she's the oldest of the three of us, and she's our in-house legal counsel, I guess you can say. Yeah, so she's a family lawyer, so we go to her for opinions about everything, not just the professional realm.
But like we were saying that, you know, you gotta make sure that the sibling you work with, you have an understanding. Because she's older than me, I think her coming into the business would have had a different dynamic of older sibling, younger sibling, boss, not. So I think that would have for sure had an issue for us in the beginning, at least.
Yeah, wow, that's good. Here's one more. Let me see. First of all, congratulations on your success and being the epitome of a diverse success. In the last 10 years, Canadian immigration populations from Indian heritage has grown 260%, close to 2 million people. What has been the growth trajectory of Hans?
The growth,
Trajectory.
Yeah, more than 200%. When I took over the business from my parents, there was one employee. And we're at 30 now. So it has been good. We went from a 7,000 square foot facility to a 24,000 square foot facility, which now we're starting to bust at the seams slightly yet. So it's been good. It's been really, really good.
Wow, and you have so much more you can go. Like the growth is, I think, unlimited there. Gosh, here's one that was interesting too. The whole family depending on a single revenue stream can be dangerous in times of crisis. How do you manage this?
That is such a good question.
So
I don't think we've ever been asked that.
We haven't been asked that. So when I moved back to Toronto, I was like 32 or so. For 2 years, I moved in and I lived with my mommy and daddy, and I drove their vehicle. The only thing I think I spent money on was my cell phone. So it's very hard if you have a separate house and you have to make that house sustain itself. We all live together, her, me, and my two parents.
Yeah.
To be able to, you know, not take a salary out when we couldn't take a salary out.
Right.
You know, we all kind of survived on 20 grand a year type of thing. So if we all lived separately, it would have been exceptionally hard.
And part of
Yeah.
it is also that I was much younger when my parents started the business. So part of living on single income also means that they're always out of the house. They're never at home because they have to grind and work and do that.
Right.
So part of that means sacrifice of not being home at all times, not being able to sit down with family for every dinner, every meal. And
Mhm.
it worked for us in the sense that, like, even though maybe I wasn't sitting down with them for every meal, I saw how hard they were working. So it was always for the betterment of all of us, to be honest.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural dynamic. I think that's probably missing a lot today in our society, you know, in the way things have been changing and family dynamics. But I think that cultural piece is so important. And, you know, it plays a role in people's success and just demonstrating, you know, that respect, I think, that you still show to your family members and your parents and so forth, and being able to cultivate that relationship, you know, of trust.
Yeah.
So it's definitely commended. But we're at our 2 p.m. Time frame, so we've completed our hour. It was amazing. I love the presentation. Love you're just so genuine and real, and you know, really, really like that. We're getting such great responses. Love the presentation. Thanks for your experience. People from overseas watching, Uganda, good questions, you know, like really, really great. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot of repeat people watching this session, but we want to thank you so much, and all the best and success in the future.
Thank you so much for having us, and all the best to everybody watching as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You.
Thank you, everyone.